All right. So JD, who do we have joining us today?
We have Bob, co-founder of Bold Marketing and Communications, joining us today.
It's fantastic. And just a little bit of background. So Bob and I have known each other for a few minutes. In fact, I'll wait until he joins us to give you the full background. But I've known this guy for my entire marketing career. I've known him, which is amazing, dating back to the mid 1700s. He looks fabulous.
Hey Patrick, how are you?
Go ahead, Bob. How are you?
Good. Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while. And so, guys, so Bob and I worked together at my first gig out of school, out of grad school, at Cunningham Communication in Silicon Valley. And when I joined, he had been there, and he was a big deal back then, and still is a big deal. But I always looked up to him, and it's amazing that, I mean, gosh, what was that? That was in the mid '90s, and here we are in the mid '20s. It's crazy.
It was. And Andy Cunningham, who founded that firm, was and still is amazing. She was probably the premier marketer, communicator in Silicon Valley at that time. And every VC firm was telling their portfolio clients, you have to work with Cunningham. So we had people knocking on the door wanting to work with us at that moment. So we had some just amazing clients at the time, and launched many different categories. It was exciting, and Andy was brilliant. Ron Ritchie was her co-founder. He was amazing, ended up going to Cisco and helped that company become the market leader for many decades. So it was exciting.
Yeah,
I know Ron Ritchie.
Yeah.
Cisco's a customer of mine, and that's a big deal, right? To have worked with him at all, or worked adjacent to him. And can I just say real quick that marketing in the 90s was a lot different than marketing right now? How things have changed.
how things have changed.
Well, the technology stack that exists now and that any consequential company is using didn't exist at that point in time. So yeah, it's changed dramatically, and it's really exciting to see those changes. And we're at the moment right now, at a flex point, where AI is going to yet again change that stack and how companies reach out to their customers. It's going to impact the customer journey, demand generation. It's just having a ripple effect across all the marketing activities and communications activities that we do.
So Bob, have you seen that in your work already? Right? Because I mean, at the beginning, even 2 years ago, right? Everybody was, I got to get some AI, right? And we got to get some AI. Nobody really knew what that meant, right? And now people are figuring it out in terms of, all right, it's not AI for the sake of AI. It's how is it that we can employ AI to help us do what we do? And so, are you seeing that in your work?
Oh yeah, it's like, I mean, AI is being used. And AI is one of those sort of general terms. What does it really mean? Basically, there are different categories. So large language models are being used extensively for brainstorming, for early content development. I mean, smart companies know that you can't generate something with an LLM and then just use that. You have to have a person look at it, massage it, work on it, make it really better. But it's a great starting place, right? You don't have to look at a blank page anymore. You can quickly develop an outline. You can bring in information. You got to verify everything and check it, but it certainly speeds up processes a lot. And then there's AI agents we're just at the beginning of that are being deployed across various marketing activities that help to speed up those processes, make them more efficient, decrease the time that people have to spend on repetitive tasks and things like that. I mean, that's been going on for a while, but we're seeing it accelerate as these models become more effective.
Yeah.
I think AI is having a profound effect for business owners on the back office, right? I mean, we talk a lot about the activities of marketing and advertising and brand development, but the back office is where we spend a lot of our time, unfortunately. I mean, we don't want to, but somebody has to run the business. But now generating an SOW or even just a proposal is a snap compared to what it was even 2 years ago.
That's definitely the case. Well, I wouldn't call it a snap. That's never, it's just a lot. It eliminates a lot of tasks that had to be done. For an example, we used to deploy an intern to do some research on a category, let's just say, and pull together information. Now you can use AI to do that same job faster, and then have somebody look at it and make sure you haven't missed anything big, because you still have to be very careful about that. The models are somewhat behind in some instances, so you got to be careful to make sure you're capturing the latest data. But it's a big help, and it does speed up that process tremendously, which decreases cost for an agency, right? One of our big costs is the cost of business acquisition. And that means all the time that our people have to spend researching the category and the client and making sure we're, when we do our proposal, that it really speaks to that customer in a deep way. And that's a lot of time and cost. And now we've been able to shorten that significantly.
Do you find that the capability of content creation and brainstorming and all of that is also good for marketing your own business? Because I think marketing agencies are notoriously shy about marketing themselves.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they're shy or they just don't have time.
Yeah.
It's
A little bit of a cobbler's children, right?
Yes,
That's right.
that's exactly what it is. Because we always have to prioritize client work, right? I mean, they come first, they pay the bills. So what we do is secondary and usually done in the evenings. But it definitely does help with that too. For example, we do a lot of thought leadership content around a number of areas, and it helps a lot to be able to say, okay, here's the idea, here's the thesis, give me an outline, what should be included in this, and you can get that very rapidly, and then you can go to work on creating the article. So it definitely helps us a lot, and helps to reduce the amount of time you spend on creating content, and whether it's content for a drip campaign or whether it's a thought leadership article, it really helps.
Yeah. So we just kind of jumped into the future, but let's rewind a little bit. So Bob, we were Cunningham together, and you're now with your own agency. Talk about the journey from then to now, and how did you get started in this?
Yeah, well, let's see. How can I give you the Cliff Notes version of that? But yeah, I worked was very privileged, honestly, to work in Silicon Valley at some very leading firms: Cunningham Communications, Blanca Otis, Burson Marsteller, Edelman.
Never heard of them. None of them. Yeah. Never heard of any of those agencies.
So I was, I worked at senior positions in all of those firms, and was very lucky to work with some amazing clients, Microsoft and SAP and Oracle and HP, and the list goes on and on. Many, many startups, and so, but over time, as you go, rise up in the ranks, you have less and less to do with the clients. And you recognize that, one of the challenges of the agency model is that you have to push work down to the lowest possible level that it can be done so that you can optimize profits, right? Most of these big agencies are owned, with the exception of Edelman, are owned by conglomerates. And so it's all about the profit, which of course it should be, right? So and that results in work that's being done at a level where it can sometimes be questionable. So when we founded Bold Marketing and Communications, my business partner and I, Paul Renato, were talking about this. He's been on the client side his entire career, so he's looked at it from the other perspective, and I've been on the agency side most of the time. So we were like, how can we create an agency where you have experienced people actually working on the business and still be profitable? And that's where we came up with Bold. We also, focused on the idea that data is important, that you don't want to make things up based on your, what you think your gut instinct is, but really look at the data to understand the customer, the market, and how you can engage with those folks. And that was kind of the basis of our firm. So that's kind of a short story of going from point A to point B.
Yeah. Yeah. And things have changed, right? I mean, so, to Craig's point, right? Marketing in the 90s is very different than it is today. And, how we market today is even different than we marketed, how we marketed 10 years ago. And so, what are the biggest changes that you've seen in the last 10 years or so in terms of, what clients are asking for and what clients are demanding, and the type of work, and then on the other side of that, the engagement, right? Because the channels have evolved so rapidly. So what's the biggest change? What's the biggest change that you've seen?
Well, you could write a book on that. That's probably a college level course, or several books. But some of the biggest changes are, clients still, they want marketing and communications to drive the business forward, right? Build brand, help acquire customers, and keep them, and then help those customers advocate for the brand. And so, that's generally consistent throughout the years. How you do that has changed a lot, right? So we do a lot of focus on understanding the customer journey and what are the pivotal moments along that journey where you can create the engagement that's going to bring the customer to you, that's going to build that relationship with the customer that's needed for them to make these decisions to buy your product or services. We work mostly in B2B, so these are consequential decisions when you're going to say, I'm going to replace what I've currently got with a new, software product or SaaS product. So there's a whole, we call it the architecture of influence. There's a lot of people involved in those decisions. You have to understand how to engage with all of them on their own terms, what they need to hear, how you're solving their problems. And that's the customer journey. That leads into creation of marketing programs all along the way and helping support the sales activities. So what's changed is really the tools that we have to understand the customer. We do a lot of digital, panels. Like you used to have to do focus groups where you brought people in. Now that can all be done digitally online. You can understand what the customers are thinking, what they're talking about, what they're saying to each other. So you can factor that into like, okay, here's the problems that they're having that we can speak to that will draw them to us. So those tools have changed, but the need of, marketing is about helping build the brand and grow the business. It has been since the beginning, and it still is.
Yeah. So you're right. Thank you very much, David Ogilvy, right? Going all the way back to Mr. Ogilvy, right? Advertising is advertising, marketing is marketing, right? At the end of the day, you want to achieve the same things. The interactions with brands, have the interactions with CMOs changed at all? Has the tone and tenor, the way that, they're asking you to work with them, has that changed?
Oh yeah. I think, today more than ever, CMOs are really in the hot seat, right? Because nobody wants to blame the product. Usually they blame the marketing. Yeah, that's just, the nature of oftentimes the founders or the folks running the firm are either from the sales side or from the product side, and they tend to believe that it's the marketing that's the problem. And sometimes it is. But the CMO is increasingly in the hot seat. That's why you see these tenures for CMOs. I think they have the lowest tenure among the C-suite. So that's an indicator that there's a lot of unhappiness with the folks in that role. And there's also not a lot of trust. So we just wrote an article about this, what CMOs can do in that first 100 days to really build that trust and get off to a really good start, so they can avoid having to be replaced. So I think there's a lot of pressure on them. We really have to help them solve problems. We have to help them achieve their goals. We have to understand their goals. And if we do that, then their success is our success.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering, again, I'm all over the place. As we think about the channels, we think about the tools, we think about, it used to be that, again, going back to the days of Cunningham, right? I mean, people came up through journalism, they came through marketing, right? I came through political science and then MBA, but they come from different channels, or they were kind of defined paths in, and now you have Instagram, you have TikTok, right? You have all of these, these new channels, and new channels are going to continue to emerge. And just like at the advent of social media, right? When social media, exploded, we couldn't hire for a social media manager because nobody had experience with it, right? We had to build the playbook for that.
It was kind of a high level deal back then.
Yeah.
It kind of was. And so I guess my question is, when you're looking at skills now, right, what are you looking for from, in hiring? What kind of skills? Because again, there's not a lot of, road under a lot of these new emerging channels.
Yeah, that's true. Although, these channels have now been around for 20 years, 10 plus years anyway. And so there is a lot of experience out in the market, people that really deeply understand all of the channels that are out there, especially ones that are sort of the non-traditional media, the social media, right? So initially, the problem was we had people that understood social media, but they understood it from a personal standpoint. I know how to use it for myself, but do I know how to use it for a business purpose? That was a big issue that you would hire somebody, they'd say, yes, I understand social media, I'm a social media expert. But what they were an expert at is using it for personal reasons, not for a business purpose. So really, it's combining the business skills with the social media, understanding the channel, and that's where you get the person you want, who can help use these channels for driving the business forward. But that's the past. I mean, now almost everybody in that channels have a very deep knowledge of what's going on, and things are changing constantly, right? These platforms have all changed. They change the rules, they change what you can do, they change the opportunities, and you have to stay up with that. So you really, what we look for is people that are flexible of mind, right? Because everything is always changing. You have to be someone who's adaptable. That's more important than almost technical skill, adaptability. So we look for those adaptable people that are creative and can take in information, take in data, change their decision, alter what they're doing to what's needed in this, whatever the data is telling them to do. And that's really more powerful than even the technical skills, which you can learn. Of course, these are junior level people. A senior person, we expect them to know that already.
Yeah, well, I would fail miserably because Craig is really good at this stuff, and keeping up on it. But JD makes fun of me on a daily basis because I can't even figure out how to, I don't know. It's ridiculous. But Craig, you're really good at it.
To your credit, Patrick, you're better than many. You're not completely hopeless, but
that's very kind of you. Very, very generous.
That's good to hear, Patrick. I'm glad to hear that.
One of the most complicated and fluid things in the space is Meta's advertising platform. I mean, almost every day there's a new shift. A Google Pixel is never going to fire right every day, all the time. You constantly have to monitor these things that should be, very patently well done at this point, and they're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Most of the time, constantly changing. So you do have to keep on top of it, and even senior people have to, because the junior people are looking to you to do that. And so I always say, if you're in marketing, are you the CMO of your own marketing agency or not? If you own the business, and you kind of have to be. I mean, if you're the knowledge base and you're selling customers on the fact that you're running a state of the art thing that's going to help them move forward, you have to have the knowledge as well. I mean, it's tough. Well, maybe Patrick doesn't, but everybody else does.
Craig, you are 100% right. That's exactly correct. And yeah, senior people you have to know, because the junior people are looking to you to help explain like what's the strategy behind this. And you can't develop a strategy if you don't understand how the tool works. And the changes are constant. And yes, Meta is particularly challenging, although LinkedIn does the same thing. I mean, we run into those issues all the time. Lack of consistency, changing things without really telling us. And then all these channels are now being like crowded, like everybody's in there now. So it used to be that you could, not that many years ago, you had the playing field, pretty open. Now it's gotten jammed up with content and a lot of what I call pollution, which is, all the negative things that brands don't want to be associated with, that clogs up those channels. But yeah, you have to factor all those things in and really understand what's going on and keep on top of it, which is a whole job in itself.
And do you like? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Craig.
I was going to say, I mean, I think there's another job now too that we didn't have to worry about, not very long ago, which is the whole influencer marketing aspect of things, because it used to be your influencers were few and far between. That wasn't a thing that you had to. It wasn't a whole part of your business, and now it has to be. I mean, it's a whole category by itself that is used to just be kind of part of the game, and now it's a lot of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's the medium and the message. It's the medium, the message, and the messenger, right? So, and you want to align those three things very carefully. And there's influencers, but what's happened is, we went from a small group of influencers now to a huge number.
Everyone,
of them. Yeah, and there's now micro influencers that might be really important for your category.
That's right,
but not necessarily have anything to do with somebody else's. So, it used to be you get a celebrity or somebody who's an influencer or a sports star. Now there could be somebody who's an expert in your area. We do this all the time, especially in B2B space. We find these folks that are really experts and that have that have been online for a long time, communicating with and building an audience, and leverage them. And
right.
Those are great folks to work with.
Yeah, you're technical unboxers, and you can find them, but that's a skill in itself, is finding and communicating and engaging with these folks, because they really are not very good actually at that contracting themselves part of the business. And so now you have these platforms where you've got a medium in between that you have to go try to select people, which is very frustrating.
It can be, for sure. I mean, what we often do is, so we have platforms that where we identify the folks in the category for our client, for example.
Yeah.
And then we look at the people that have the biggest voice in those categories. And, those are the people that we then try to connect with and see if we can turn them into influencers. Sometimes they don't even realize they are an influencer,
right.
Which, can work in our favor sometimes, but because they've never been approached before. But you have to really look at the data to see who's getting a lot of engagement, who's got a large audience, and what are they saying, and how does that align with the message that you need to communicate?
Do you use different criteria to identify the influencers, right? So you talked about reach, right, and the audience, right? So at Zocalo Group, when we started doing influencer identification, right? So for a new frozen food, right, we would go find the influencers, and this was before really the explosion of social media, except for Facebook. It was bloggers, right?
Yeah.
And so we would look at bloggers or other people, and in any category, but there may be 100 of them, right? And so you've got to put some criteria, right? Some stringency around. All right, well, how are we going to, if we have 100, then how are we going to, how are we going to rank them so that we can, we go to the first 10 or whatever? What criteria are you using now?
It varies by the category and the client, right? So, and again, it gets back to what's the objective of the campaign that you're going to leverage them for, right? So, if it's, is the objective to be someone who can appear very sort of real to the audience, or is it somebody who is just, really well known in that area? And thinking about the goals and then the effectiveness of that person that delivering messages. I mean, you have to audition these folks. Can they deliver? Depending on what you're using them for. Or is, in the B2B instance, a lot of times it's somebody who has gravitas offline, like they're like a professor of, a university in this area, or they work, as a senior person in a company that's important to the customers that we're trying to reach. Those can be really important attributes as well. And then what are we going to use them for? Do we want to use them to create some promotional videos? Are we going to use them to be on a webinar or in a podcast, or, what's the channel? Or is it just social media posts? We want to create a social campaign around that person. So all of those go into the factor of deciding, like, what are the key attributes? And, you sometimes you're just like, okay, this all looks like it lines up, and then you just have to test it.
I think consistency is something that we have to look for these days, right? Because the odd person or post can get 1 million views sometimes, right? For no particular reason, day and time and hashtag for, whatever keywords are in the title. But if you can do it consistently, which is difficult, those are the people that you have to figure out, what's their science and can they do it on demand? Which is a good trick. Are they influential just because you say their name, or are they influential because they've got all the tricks? And if they've got all the tricks, can they use them for good?
Yeah. Or at least for your clients, good.
That's right. Exactly.
But I think Craig, that's exactly right. Consistency is very, very important. That they're consistently, like, again, if it's going to be a social media campaign, or you're going to leverage them through those channels, the fact that they're posting regularly, that's very important. Like, so we look at, how often people post, what the engagement is on those posts. All of those factors are critical as you determine, like, who's the right person.
Yeah.
It's interesting that we had our conversation, I believe 20 years ago or 15 years ago, would have been more about different medium and media than what it is now. Right now, we talk about podcasts and social campaigns versus TV and radio and billboards. That's called boots on the ground marketing now, right? The old school media.
Right. So, Bob, are you? You're in it, right? And you're working with clients. You're doing client work. You're in it. And it sounds like you made a conscious choice to move from, right? So you were at senior leaderships and some big agencies, right? Where you're not necessarily doing the work. And it seems like you made a conscious decision to start Bold because you wanted to be in it. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, look, when you're a senior agency person, you get called in, but usually it's because there's a big problem, right? There's some kind of an issue. There's a crisis with the account, or the client's having a crisis, or, something like that. And that's when you're called in to help. Or, there's a big kickoff meeting and those kind of things you go to. But, you're not doing the everyday work, and I miss that. So obviously, Paul and I, and we run the agency, so we allocate a certain amount of time to doing those kinds of things. But we like to be involved with the clients. We are involved with the clients. We, do consequential amounts of work set strategy, review the materials. I mean, although all of our teams, and that's another decision that we made at Bold, all of our teams are senior people. We don't have junior people on our accounts. And so these people, they know what they're doing cold. You know, they require very little oversight, which is very refreshing. But we still, you know, I enjoy the work. Paul enjoys the work. And I think that's one of the reasons why we, you know, decided to do this.
I think it's a modern miracle that I do the same thing, Bob. I've got a fractional team, but they're all ringers from big companies, right? Who don't want either full-time work or just want to contribute. And you can use all the outsourcing services for your junior people, right? The Fivers of the world can do a lot of your mundane tasks, and that it's been going on kind of quietly and behind the scenes for 10 years, but you know, it's pretty mainstream now.
I think that's right, Craig. I think that's very right. You're, you know, and look, clients appreciate this because, you know, one of the challenges that we always had, you know, at the mid-size and larger agencies is, you know, the quality of work at that mid-level. I mean, these are people that are still learning, you know, and so they're learning on the client's dime, and this clever clients realize that and they don't like it. So, you know, we just eliminated that. So we're, you know, it's senior folks. They know what they're doing. They get the work done. They understand the business of the clients. That's another challenge. It's like, I used to teach a class at these agencies on mid-level, you know, management, which is to help folks that are coming up, like, understand this is a business. You know, it's like, you have to think like a business person, because they think like marketers and communicators. They understand that. That's what they went to school for. But, you know, no one ever taught them, because they're not business graduates, right? They don't have a business degree. No one ever taught them those skills. So you have to help them understand that. But, you know, with your senior folks, they get it. They know that they're not there to waste time, that they, you know, we're billing by the hour. So it's got to be effective and consistent and efficient.
Yeah.
They know to ask the questions about how does the business make money, right? I mean, and that comes from the School of Hard Knocks, not even necessarily business school. I think you have the same sort of education background as I do, journalism and political science. I mean, I learned business from working in businesses. And I don't know if they even teach you journalism in journalism school anymore.
That's a good question.
That's a good point. So to that, Bob, then for those, you know, for those that are wanting to break out on their own and start their own agency, what words of wisdom would you give to them as they're starting out?
I don't know if this is wisdom, but I can tell you, as Craig mentioned, the School of Hard Knocks, one thing that you learn, if you want to start your own agency, the first thing that you do is get a job at an agency, right? Work there for 5 years minimum, learn the business, build a network, and whatever level you are, always remember that new business is part of your job. So build that network, work deeply with the clients, get out to, you know, whatever networking events there are anymore, or certainly networking online with people, meet people, introduce yourself, because that network is going to serve you if you're trying to start your own agency. But you want to, you know, let somebody else pay for you to learn how to be an agency person. Don't try to do that yourself. I would say, you know, minimum 5 years, 10 years is a good amount of time to be at an agency, and then break out on your own if you can. But, you know, not everyone needs to do that. I mean, sometimes, you know, people are very happy working at a firm because, you know, it's a whole different ballgame when you're running your own business. You have to be really prepared to deal with all the things about running the business, you know, making sure that invoices go out and making sure that the money is collected, hiring people and, you know, managing them and mentoring them. And so those are all the things you need to do that you don't necessarily have to do in the agency world where your paycheck's coming. You don't have to worry, you know, and as you get to a senior level, you start worrying more about this, but, you know, if clients come and go, you get a paycheck anyway. So when you have your own agency, not necessarily.
That's not the case.
Well, that was great. Hey, Bob, thank you so much for spending time with us. It was great to catch up. Before we let you go, if somebody were to want to get in touch with you, want to learn more, how do they do that?
Well, they can certainly email me at bob@boldmarcom.com, or they can go to our website, boldmarcom.com, and find us there, check us out. But thank you for asking that question, Patrick. But yes, Bold Marketing and Communications, Google it. Or you can, like I said, boldmarcom.com is our web address.
That's great. Google it. It's, the kids don't even say Google anymore, right? Just look it up, because everything now is a
Search it up.
search engine, right? Search it up.
Search it up. Exactly.
Okay.
That I know. I heard that term the other day. I was like, oh, okay.
All right. Well, to all our listeners, search it up. And Bob, thank you so much. This was
Thank
great.
you. It's been a pleasure, guys. Talk to
All
you
right.
soon.
Take care.
Bye.
All right.
All right, Brian, you want to go off camera and have Bob go off camera?
Bob, if you're still here, by the way, it's great to meet you.
Yeah,
There it
really
is.
nice to meet you, Craig. You and I'd love to, have a chat and hear more about what you do and whatnot. So yeah, hit me up and let's have a chat.
That'd be great.
It's great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. This is awesome. I love having these conversations. This is the fun part of the day. I appreciate it. And Jade, nice to meet you, and thank you for all your help putting this together or keeping me on track.
Great.
So
Wrangling.
yeah, I'll get out of your guys' hair and let you do the stuff that needs to be done to make this work.
All right. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
That was great. He's such a neat guy.
Fascinating. Yeah.
I mean, and truly, when we worked together, he was, he was up here and I was down here, and he was one of the, the really well-respected senior folks at Cunningham. And by the way, so Andy Cunningham Communications, she worked with Steve Jobs she worked for Regis McKenna, which was the famous marketing agency in the Silicon Valley. And Andy actually ran the PR and the marketing to launch the, I want to say it's the Apple IIe Mac.
Wow.
Which is, yeah, she is a legend. And so she opened, her own thing. And Bob was one of those guys that I always just looked up to. And, to reconnect all this time later is just, it's so cool. And he's such a neat guy.
Yeah, he is. He's got, I love the way he explains the bits and pieces of the work, right? He so very cleanly and concisely sums up the best practices and things that you have to do for success with customers. And I think that I love these conversations just in general that we're doing on this podcast, because running a marketing business is not necessarily about marketing at all.
Right. Right. You're right. And, to the point of, he clearly and concisely explains things. He should go into marketing.
He should. He really should. He can sum something up like nobody's business.
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, speaking of summing up, this is fantastic. And looking forward to the next one too.
Same. Yeah, this is great. And thanks again, JD. You're the best.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of On Agency, a podcast presented by Mahalo Hub. Your hosts were Patrick Rooney and Craig Fisher, with producer JD, engineer Brian Ross, and music by Steve Stetler. If you want to hear more, please like, subscribe, and review. Questions and comments can be sent to jd@mahalohub.com.